It's time for our favorite time of the week. We are going to check out what nonsense is going on the official FF14 forums, my favorite place to read about everybody's complaints. It's basically all anybody does here is complain, and it will be beautiful. It's just fun to see what topics are being discussed and then add my 2 cents to them. So let's go ahead and have a look here. We'll just take it from the top. A lot of things being discussed this week because we just had the live letter, the first live letter for 7.2. So there are plenty of things on people's minds. But now here's a fun thread. FF14 player count reached the lowest point in 4 years. We lost 75% of the player base. That's the title of the thread. So before we even click on it, and this is not me shilling for the game, this is misleading because what they're going to say is we lost 75% from the peak at the beginning of the expansion, which is, again, that's misrepresenting what's actually going on, because every time an expansion launches, you get a lot of people that log in to only play the story and only play whatever got released with the expansion. They'll sub for 1 month and then they'll log out and they'll wait until the next expansion comes out. There are a lot of people that basically treat this like it's a story game and they only play the story, so they'll come back at like 7.5, they'll resubscribe, do all the patch story, and then do 8.0 and then unsubscribe again. That happens every single expansion. There's also a lot of like fair weather gamers that, oh, this game's getting a new expansion, I'll get back into it because all my friends are playing it and everybody's talking about it. They'll also unsubscribe after a month. Every single expansion, there's a huge peak when people try the new story, and then it craters after that and settles back into regular numbers. This has like been consistently the pattern forever. It's also the pattern for virtually every game that has an expansion-based update model. So we have lost 75% of players from the peak at Dawntrail launch, but those people were never going to play consistently anyway. Like those are the people that come in for the new expansion and they log out until there's another one. That is completely normal. However, the player count is very low right now, and it's lower than it's been like on average for a long time. Let's click the thread. Now, they're using Steam charts because you basically have to. It's the only accurate metric that you can use to track player logins, and it's only Steam logins, so it's excluding Xbox, PlayStation, and just non-Steam PC launcher. But it's safe to assume that these numbers are probably reflective of the trends that the entire player base is experiencing. There's no reason to believe that Steam would have a different trend in player count than other ways of logging in. So for January and the last 30 days, we're down below 17,000 players. The last time it's been that low was early Shadowbringers. This is also demonstrated in the Lucky Bancho numbers. That's what they're showing here. Pretty much everything that shows player trends is reinforcing this information. So like the average player count right now, the lowest it's been in years. But we're also waiting on the major patch, which is 7.2. And I think it's too soon to make game dead, players declining, oh no, everything's ruined. It's too soon to make threads like that because we need to wait until 7.2 is out. Basically, between right now and the very end of the expansion, those are going to be the lowest player counts that you hit because everybody's waiting on something new to do. 7.1 is like, mostly, there's not much in it. There wasn't much in 7.1. Everybody's complaining there's nothing to do. 7.2 is a patch that's going to add like most of the long-term content. So if we get 7.2 with all of the long-term stuff, the instance zone, shade triangle, as well as, cosmic exploration, if that patch comes out, all that stuff gets added, and then the player count continues to drop, then we'll know there's a problem. Right now the player count is low because there's just not that much to do, which is still a bad thing. It's like everybody's been saying they should really rearrange where content gets released in the patch cycles. The 0.1 patch should have more like repeatable content in it. It should have more like long-term stuff in it to keep people logging in so that we don't have this giant crater at the beginning of every expansion. But so far this is still like within normal parameters. Like again, the dip from peak Dawntrail to where we're at now is bigger than it was in Endwalker. It's bigger than it was in Shadowbringers, but it's normal. We really gotta wait until we get to 7.2 before we could say for sure if it's like going to be a continuous issue, because again, there's just not a lot of long-term content in the game right now. And again, it's taking them too long to get that added, but once it does get added, then we'll kind of know like what our average player count's going to be for probably the rest of the expansion. So that's why this thread is like, it's a little bit disingenuous. It's like, it's highlighting what is an issue. The lower player counts is like, it's concerning, but we have to wait and see a little bit. I think the next relics will make or break for the expansion. I think so too. That's why I think 7.2 is going to be the patch that really determines what the rest of the expansion is going to be like, because we've got almost 2 more years of Dawntrail, and that will be heavily defined by how good 7.2 is. But doomsaying right now is just a little silly because, yeah, it's fair to complain like there's not enough to do, there's not that many people online, I can't find people to run alliance raids with, I can't find anybody to raid with, my FC is all logging out. Those are very valid complaints because that is like kind of happening. I've seen a lot of people reporting that, especially if you're on a lesser populated server. But the expansion's not dead yet, 7.2 adds some casual content. Yeah, that's what's going to make the difference. Because yeah, this is a problem that's created by the fact that we don't get that much casual content in the early expansion cycle. They should fix that. The devs should move some of this stuff up. We should get instance zones earlier. We should get more like long-term content earlier. But we got to wait and see like how much the player count bounces back after we do get that stuff. Does the text say in their post? Let's see. It says last month in which player count was below 17,000 was January 21, which was patch 545. Lucky Boncho confirms these numbers. We haven't gotten the second patch. We've already lost 75% of our player base. But I guess those $5 Hilda hairstyles will single-handedly save this game. Yeah, so this is just like engagement bait. Because saying we haven't even gotten to the second patch and we already lost 75% of the player base. The reason so many people are not logging in is because we haven't got to the second patch. Which again, is still a problem, which is caused by the patch cadence. But it's not like, the numbers are not likely to stay this low. You know what I mean? Like, once the second patch comes out, that's gonna be the thing that gets people to keep logging in more regularly because it'll have like more like ongoing stuff to do. Or at least, that's what we're hoping. Would've been better if they compared 7.1 to 6.1 numbers. Yeah, cause, let's see. Steam charts. Let's have a look. Final Fantasy 14 online. Again, these are just the Steam numbers. Same thing that guy is looking at. Let's compare all time. So here's Dawntrail. On Steam, it peaked around the 90,000 player mark. It is now cratering at 17,000 concurrent players. For Endwalker, we also peaked in the 90,000s, and then before the 0.1 patch, it dropped to just under 30,000. So yeah, this is much lower than we were in Endwalker, but it is still a similar trend. You know, because you go from this really high peak down to this super low valley, and this is like one of the lowest points that the player count hit for the entire Endwalker expansion. Actually, sorry, this was before 0.1, so 0.1 into 0.2, the player count was actually pretty high. Yeah, interestingly enough, at this same point in the Endwalker patch cycle, it looks like they had like double the players on Steam, which is kind of wild. That's higher than I would have thought, honestly. But then after the 0.2 patch, it cratered down to 27,000. Yeah, so Endwalker, like, obviously way busier than Dawntrail, and this is concerning, but again, like, we don't really have a lot to do right now. We gotta wait and see. Because oddly enough, Endwalker seems like it hit its lowest point after the 0.2 patch, which was Abyssos. That was the Island Sanctuary patch, that was the Criterion Dungeon patch, and that's where it seemed to hit its lowest point. Whereas Dawntrail, I think, will be the opposite, because we're actually gonna get a field operation. WoW Refugees might have dipped. Well, see, WoW Refugees came in like a year prior to that, so yeah, that could have been a lot of people leaving back for other games, but okay, if one expansion doesn't do as well as others, the game's still doing fine. Yes, but it is concerning. Like I said, I don't think that this is a genuine way of presenting the issue the way that this guy's doing it, but it is concerning how much lower the player count is compared to this same time in the Endwalker patch cycle. Like, I'm sure the developers are not happy about that. You know, they got to be looking at that like, oh crap, like, you know, what do we do? Because the thing is, as far as I'm concerned, like, as far as like content goes in Dawntrail, it is better than Endwalker content-wise, and we know that we're getting more than what we got in Endwalker content-wise. Whereas, you know, obviously a lot of people were not happy with the story, which has scared a lot of people away. But otherwise, one for one, the amount of content we get Endwalker to Dawntrail, it's either similar or we have more. And so the fact that there's fewer people playing is definitely concerning. Although it is also worth noting, though, that the Endwalker patch cycle, the 0.2 patch came out in the middle of summer, whereas this one's happening at the beginning of the year. So it could just be that it's January, you know, or February now. Maybe people just aren't playing right now for whatever reason. Everybody's at school, everybody's getting back to work. There's a lot less work from home these days. Like, there's definitely other factors that have to be considered. But yeah, like I said, my thought on the matter is we gotta see what the population does after 7.2, because that's the one that's going to add at least the beginnings of most of the major content that we get the rest of the expansion, as far as like, you know, the field operation and the cosmic exploration and just the long-term things to do. We got to see what happens after that. So I am optimistic that it will recover somewhat, but I do hope that they take this as a sign, the devs do, that they need to change the content release schedule. Push some of this stuff up. Like, there's no reason that the 0.1 patch should only have an alliance raid in it. They got to get the field operations, they got to get the relics out earlier. I don't know why they wait so long to start the relics. They should start on the 0.0. Like, you should get relics like right after you finish MSQ. You should have something to do to grind your relics. I wish that they would start content earlier, and hopefully they take this as a sign to actually start doing that again, especially with the, you know, 4.5 month, patch release schedule. Because yeah, they've been following the formula almost to a T for like, you know, 3-4 expansions now, and hopefully this kind of convinces them to break the mold a little bit and try to do things a bit differently next time around, but we'll see. All right, this one's fun. This is Pure Disgusting Greed. I've seen this thread, I've already read it, so I know what it is, but let's go ahead and have a look. Pure Disgusting Greed. Modern Aesthetics Headhound. It was the $5 Hilda hair from Heavensward. You need to pay $60 to buy the full game or $40 for an expansion. On top of that, there's a subscription fee. After multiple years of asking, can we get Hilda's hairstyle? And they like a thread from years ago asking for it. Square didn't add it to a dungeon or the gold saucer. They added it as a $5 Mog Station item. Yep. Microtransactions you could buy is now more than $1,000. This is a game they have to pay AAA money for. Yep, this is just pure disgusting greed. Not to mention they don't even allow any refunds, so if you don't like the hairstyle or change of race, you can't do anything about it. How is this acceptable? Now, this is a little hyperbolic, but they do have a point. They're expressing it in the most hyperbolic way possible, but they do have a point. It is crazy that you have to pay for this hairstyle that people have been begging for years and years and years, like $5 USD. There's only, I think, 2 hairstyles in the shop that I'm aware of, and it's these 2. It's this, whatever horrible looking thing on this Hrothgar's head is, and then the Hilda hair. And then I guess there's ones that come with some of the character costumes. But yeah, it's one of those things where like every time something gets added to the cash shop, someone makes a thread about it saying this should just be in the game for free. Because like it was the same thing with the Cruise Chaser mount. Remember the Cruise Chaser mount got added and everybody's like, I can't believe this costs money. Why isn't it in the game for free? And this is just every time anything gets added to the cash shop, we have these threads. But I do agree though, it's crazy that a $60 game with $40 expansions and a monthly subscription that's minimum $12 has so many cosmetics in the shop. But not only that there are so many things in the shop, but the pricing of them is so high. Because like $5 for a hairstyle, that's actually not terrible. That's better than I would have expected, to be honest. Because like what gets me are like the $22 outfits that are single character. There's like $30 mounts and stuff. Like the pricing on the cash shop in this game is ridiculously high, which is why I almost never buy anything from it, because I'm just not willing to pay those prices. But what's funny is the moment they release something new like this in the shop, you walk around Limsa, everybody's gonna have it. You look at the top selling page on the Mog Station, it's always whatever the newest thing is. Like people immediately flock to the Mog Station to buy the stuff. And I mean, I'm certainly no one to tell people how to spend their money, but it is definitely surprising how many people are willing to shell out for all this stuff that keeps getting added to the cash shop. Especially like people will buy outfits out of the cash shop and then not even wear them. I'm like, bro, paying $20 for an outfit for a single character and then not even wearing it, it just goes in the glamour dresser. I'm like, okay, yeah, if they were like account wide, if you could get them on every character, then $20 wouldn't be bad for an outfit. Or if the outfits were like $5, like some of the old seasonal event items, I think $5 is the right price for me. Anything more than that is too much. Like I'm not willing to pay more than $5 for an outfit, especially a single character outfit. But again, they keep charging $22 and people keep buying it, so why would they ever lower the price? But yeah, I don't even have a problem with the Mog Station existing per se. I just wish the prices were better, because as this thread points out, like we pay so much for the game already. It's crazy that they charge, like you could get a mount that costs more than $40. So it's like you could buy an expansion or you could buy a single mount. It's just utterly ridiculous. At the very least though, one good thing is every race can wear this hairstyle. So at least it's not locked out of, Viera and Hrothgar like some of the hats are in the cash cash shop. Riot sells gun skins of Valorant for $70. People buy it. Yeah. And like, I think that's silly too, because by all means, spend your money wherever you want to. I'm trying to justify a Jeep that I don't need, but man, I can't imagine spending that much on some of that stuff. Although for this though, like honestly, $5 for Hilda's hair. If I had a character that I thought would main this hairstyle, I would be willing to pay this. If it was any more than $5, I would not. I would think it's overpriced. For $5 though, I'm not totally against this one. I think this one is like, it's kind of in that middle area of like, yeah, it could be cheaper, but I'm not so offended by this. But yeah, it's just the classic thread of like, why isn't this just in the game for free? We get that for everything that gets added to the cash shop, so you know, it is whatever. Here's another fun one. WoW's player housing will have no FOMO and private housing wards. Now mind you, it hasn't been implemented yet, so these are just promises being made. We don't actually know how good WoW's housing is going to be, but it's clear that they're trying to outdo FF14, and Blizzard definitely has the capacity to do that. So this one's something a lot of people have been talking about. World of Warcraft player housing will have no FOMO and private housing wards. Blizzard today announced some details of their upcoming player housing system. Here's the quote. As a part of our focus on wide adoption, we wanted to ensure that housing is available to everyone. If you want a house, you can have a house. No exorbitant requirements or high purchase costs. No lotteries, and no onerous upkeep. And if your subscription lapses, don't worry, your house doesn't get repossessed. So this is directly addressing the way housing works at FF14. Hope WoW housing is really good and forces Square Enix to change how 14 housing works. My thoughts on this topic was that even if World of Warcraft makes a better housing system than FF14, I don't expect FF14's housing system to change. I don't think the devs are gonna update it because that would require effort, and a lot of effort. The way housing works in this game seems like it's held together with duct tape and string. Blah, 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 spaghetti code, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Like, spaghetti code is not a good excuse for a company that programs games for a living. Like, you know, that should not be an acceptable excuse. It's your job to code the game to make it do whatever needs to be done. But nevertheless, I will say, the housing system actually does seem like it's very slapdash. Like, it's just, like, it's kind of janky. And so I bet it probably is really hard to update it and, like, improve it in some ways. That doesn't mean they shouldn't do it, but I bet it would be pretty difficult. But yeah, like I said, I think even if World of Warcraft does come out with a better housing system than 14, I doubt that 14's housing system will improve much. Because again, how long have people been asking for housing improvements? Pretty much for as long as housing has been out. Now, they switched to the lottery system, which was definitely an improvement over clicking a sign for 12 hours. I don't know why they ever implemented that, but that was the kind of system that only works if there's like barely any players in the game. It was probably good enough for like its era, but obviously it didn't work when the servers got overloaded with new players. But yeah, the lottery system is definitely better. They're giving more customization options with the hollowed out interior where you don't have like the pillars and stuff anymore, but the way it's implemented is so janky and backward that it's like really annoying to use. One thing I've been asking for forever is like every major house designer, interior designer, decorator in this game is using mods to design their layouts, because there are housing mods that will allow you to place objects in 3D space and recreate floating glitches without having to do the glitches. Because if you do the float glitch to make items float, it's a multi-step process that takes a very long time. If you're floating a lot of objects, it takes forever. Doing the glitches naturally is a nightmare. It's really annoying. It's imprecise. It has the potential to mess up and break and go wrong, and then you got to start over. It sucks. So people use third-party tools to design their housing layouts, and this is pretty well known. It's not a secret. You know, all the third-party tools are an open secret. Like, everybody knows that everybody's using mods. And so I've been saying, like, why doesn't Square have an official system to where you can just place the objects in 3D space? They need to make a better, like, customization system for the houses so that people don't have to use mods to do it. And it can't even be that hard. Like, how hard is it just to have, like, coordinate snap? Just the 3 coordinates, snap the object wherever it needs to go. It can't be that hard. Oh man, it's like, it reminds me of Forge in Halo 3, where if you wanted to like clip items together, you had to glitch it and like have them load in slowly, and like you had to manipulate a lot of settings to get it to work, and like phasing objects together was very, very annoying to do. And then they made Halo Reach, and they just made that a native feature where you could just place stuff anywhere and you didn't need to do all that. Like it removed the need for almost any glitching at all to design a halfway decent map. It was so much better. Now, I don't know if Square, how do you think Square stacks up against Bungie? Despite everything that's people poke fun at with Destiny, I feel like Bungie's pretty good programmers, or at least they used to be back in the Halo days, but I don't know. They need to get somebody on that though. Like the housing system in FF14 definitely feels outdated. It's really cool. It's a really fun feature. I like it a lot, but they need to update it in some way. But that's my concern, is like just with the actual way that the system works, like placing items and customization and stuff like that. That's the stuff I care about. I think the lottery system is okay for what it is. The most interesting idea that I think Warcraft has is the private wards that people are talking about. That actually sounds, private neighborhoods. Yeah, this actually sounds like a really cool feature, because that would allow you to have an in-between where you still have instanced housing, but you also have neighborhoods too. Probably would have very high server requirements, like storage. Like if anybody could create a whole neighborhood instead of just a house, I bet that's heavier on the server load, but it's not like Square can't afford that. You know, I hope that if anything gets adopted, this actually sounds like a pretty cool idea. Kind of randomly thinking it's funny they put up a 50% discount to FF11 now that the Back to Vana deal campaign. Yeah, I saw that. There's a discount on the FF11 sub for like a month where it's half off. That's such a stupid promotion. Just make it free. Just make it free. If you have an FF14 sub, give them a month free of FF11 sub if you want people to actually try it. If you think you're going to convince people to pay 50% the sub price, like, no, they don't want to pay anything. Like, you're trying to sell them on a game that's 20 years old. Like, you gotta grease the wheels a little more than that. But yeah, we'll see. It's kind of funny though. Everybody's like, there's nothing to do in FF14, and Square's like, here, we'll give you half off FF11. Like, go back and play a game that's even older. Oh man, does a 20-year-old game have a sub anyway? That's a good question. That's a really good question. I don't know, I mean, RuneScape has a sub, but yeah, they might as well get rid of it at this point. For RuneScape 3, that's propped up by whales that buy stuff out of the cash shop. OSRS sub feels not as bad, but they keep trying to raise the price on that, and it creates outrage every time. But yeah, one thing that's good about gaming in general right now is that subscription models are dying out. I don't know if FF14 will ever go free to play, but I feel like that's one of those, like, eventualities that will come for every game. Because remember, like, back in the day, they didn't even do free trials on games like this. World of Warcraft didn't have a free trial back in the day either. They had their, trial up to level 20 that they added like 10 years ago. But back in the day, games didn't do free trials. Like, you just had to pay for it. Same with FF14. It didn't have a free trial all the time. Like, Warcraft trial is still level 20. Oh, that's that's a shame, because yeah, that seems like, I don't think level 20 gives you enough time to really get into World of Warcraft. If that's the case, then yeah, the FF14 trial is way better, but even so, I think subscription models are like, they're kind of on their way out. Most games nowadays are free to play with microtransactions, and I think that will inevitably win, because it's easier to build a player base when you aren't asking for a large upfront cost, and then you can just nickel and dime them later once they're hooked on the game. With FF14, I think the biggest problem is they keep making the patch cycle longer, and so you gotta pay monthly to play the game, but there's not always content monthly, so they need to work harder to justify a subscription cost. Like, they can't keep lengthening the patch cycle and charging the same price, you know what I mean? Because like, we're getting less content per month, but we're still paying the same amount. I guess that feels better than them just raising the sub price, which is functionally what they've done, but it still feels bad either way. I'll see what else we got. Yeah, it's basically shrinkflation. Yeah, it is basically shrinkflation. Maybe if they go free to play, we'll get Nafika and Sophia Glams. Lol. Disable the 30-minute penalty, but only for Crystal Tower raids. This is such a stupid thread. Okay, let's see. What does it got? I'm barely even joking at this point. So this is someone that's saying, let us skip Crystal Tower raids in Trials Roulette, or Raids Roulette. This is a problem that Square has tried to solve multiple times, and they're always going to run into the same issue, no matter what, which is the Crystal Tower Alliance raids are the only ones that are mandatory. They're the only ones that you're required to do. And so the most amount of people, like, everybody has Crystal Tower unlocked, but not everybody has all the other Alliance raids unlocked. And so just based on that alone, if you run Alliance Raid Roulette, you're most likely to get Crystal Tower. But then simultaneously, because it's mandatory, everybody has to run it at least once, which means every new player that joins the game, every sprout, is going to have to queue up for it if they get to Heavensward. And so it's going to be overrepresented in the roulette. Like, that will never go away. It doesn't matter how much they change, like, the gear syncing requirements or whatnot for the Alliance Raid Roulette. Because Crystal Tower is the only one that's mandatory, it's always going to be a majority of the roulettes. Should we put an MSQ roulette instead? I don't know. Like, I feel like that would spread out the queue times on MSQ Roulette too much. Like, it would spread it too thin. But yeah, like, the only way to really solve it would be to have it in a separate roulette from the other Alliance raids, since it is the only one that's mandatory. So they're probably never going to do that, but otherwise, you're going to end up with the same problem where people do Alliance raid roulette and they just get 90% of the time Crystal Tower. Yeah, honestly though, I'd still rather get anything from Crystal Tower than anything from the Nier raids. There's a couple of fun fights in the Nier stuff, but anything other than Puppet's Bunker, it's like, it's going to take an hour. I couldn't tell you how many times. Like, every time I get Tower at Paradigm's Breach, it literally takes an hour. Like, it's not even an exaggeration. It is like 50 minutes minimum on Crystal. It takes an hour. And so, yeah, I'll take a 15-minute Circus Tower over a 50-minute Tower at Paradigm's Breach, like, any day. Because the air raids are like, they're not unfun, but they become unfun because they take so long. And I don't know if it's just because people on Crystal suck. Like, I don't know if it's just they're not pushing their buttons enough. I'm sure that's part of it, but yeah, like, there's just no reason for them to take as long as they do. They need to, like, drop the HP on some of the bosses because they start to repeat mechanics like 3 times. That's my complaint. That's the reason I try to avoid Alliance Raid Roulette, because it's like you either get something that's boring and fast or something that's boring and slow, or rather fun and slow, which fun and slow sounds good, but it becomes boring very quickly. Man, when you're like halfway through the Hansel and Gretel fight and you realize you've already been in the raid for 20 minutes, it's like, man, what is going on? And then you get through I can't remember if the elevators before or after Red Girl, but like you get through Red Girl and then there's those stupid elevator robots that fire the in and out laser beams. You're like, oh god. Yeah, it's after Red Girl, because then you go to the one with the circled things, but it takes forever. But I do wish the Ivalice raids would show up more often. That's the thing that's odd. Like, if I do a 50-minute Orban Monastery, generally I'll enjoy that, but the 50-minute Nier raid just gets boring. So I actually enjoy like pretty much every fight on Orban. I think it's fun, and so if those fights run like 10 minutes each and the whole thing takes almost an hour, like, it's not so bad. But yeah, the Nier raids, like, there's a couple good fights, but there's a lot of that just are padding for time. Anyway, what else we got? How to fix all housing issues. Well, look no further, Yoshi P. This person on the forums has figured out how to fix every issue. What is it? Double the amount of wards, add a 3rd subdivision, make plots much cheaper, remove the lottery system, make the permits free, make apartments cheaper, let your alts have access to your house. That's the first good idea I've seen. Let us place Glam Dresser and Armoire inside our houses. Yeah, that breaks the server if you do it. The Glam Dresser and the Armoire have to be in rooms that are only accessible by 1 player at a time. They have to be in instances, because if more than 1 person can access them, it literally will destroy the server. Like, the whole server will go offline, which you could argue that's spaghetti code. They should fix that. And yeah, they should, but that's the problem. That's the problem. Now, mind you, I actually had an idea that would act as a pseudo solution to this, because I saw someone posting somewhere that it's ridiculous that you can't even sleep in your own bed in your own house. Like, you can only do it in an in-room. And my thought was, why don't we have a private study? Call it that, or like a private bedroom. Like, have a room in your house that only you can access and that nobody else can access. And then just have like nodes that you could place down. Like, okay, put the Glam Dresser either here or there or there. Like, make it less customizable, but like have all the stuff that you would want, so that you could still like do all that from your own house instead of having to go to an in-room to do it. Like dream fitting and all that. Like, it'd be simple. Just have a private room branched off of your house that takes you to an instance that no one else can access, and then you could have the best of both worlds. Yeah, it's still janky. Yeah, it still doesn't solve the initial problem that the Glam Dresser breaks the server, but at least you get to use your house to the fullest, you know? Like, but yeah, what this person's asking for, like, these are too steep. This is all too extreme. It's not gonna happen. They just want everybody to be able to have a house, which, you know, is not an unreasonable thing to want, but like, it's clear that that's not going to happen. Certainly not soon anyways. Housing really needs an overhaul, but it probably isn't worth it to Square. Yeah, it's like, the system works well enough for them. They're probably not going to change it if they can avoid changing it, and I don't think they care enough about it. And like I said, I think even if World of Warcraft makes a housing system that blows FF14's housing system out of the water, I still don't think they'll update the housing system. I don't think they care enough about it. Like, the fact that we still don't have an XYZ axis for placing items shows how little they care. And then they go around on these official live streams visiting all these houses that were obviously made with mods. They won't just improve the housing system so that people don't have to do that. They just pretend that somebody actually sat here and float glitched 200 items to make these incredible layouts. Like, come on. It's such a joke, but like, yeah, I don't think they'll ever fix it if they can avoid it. They're gonna kick that can as far down the road as they can. Let's see. Instead of censoring criticism of the live letter, maybe actually build a good game. Now here's a charged thread. I'm actually surprised this one didn't get deleted, but here's someone complaining. So after the live letter came out, there was a thread on the forums that, I'll try to remember the title of the thread, but it was something like, the 7.2 live letter is a joke. I think that's what it was called. And it was a list of grievances. Like the person said, like, so I'm watching the live letter and so far there's been no mention of this, that, or that, or that. And it was just all these bullet points of things that didn't get mentioned in the live letter. And mostly it was just complaining a lot. It was genuinely like just a complaining for no reason type of thread. Like there was maybe one legitimate point in the whole thread, which was no mention of the enhanced encounter design that Yoshi P talked about pre-Dawntrail. I still don't know what that even means though, so like I don't have enough information on that to really say anything about it, but apparently whatever it was, like he promised that the approach to encounter design would be different, and it hasn't really been talked about since. But other than that, it was just someone complaining like, oh wait, actually, it looks like this thread has all this. Hang on. Let's read the thread before we say more about it. They even did it on NA Friday night, which tells you everything you need to know about their priorities. Where is the improved encounter design you promised? Okay, yeah. So this thread actually says everything that I was just talking about. He just restated the whole thread. Why are you nerfing normal raids already before they even went live? Why is the post-patch MSQ just an uninspired nostalgia bait from FF9? FF14 is really going to repeat 6.1 through 5. Why is Cosmic Exploration reused assets from the moon? Not mentioned. Whether Phantom Jobs will be anything more than Lost Actions 2.0. Whether Shade's Triangle will be the same pointless Fate Bomb rushing. Improved encounter design. Whether Cosmic Exploration will just be Ashgardian Restoration 2.0, new variant Criterion dungeons, and anything new that hasn't already been part of the 12-year-long formula. So, most of these points are either stupid or disingenuous. So, let's break this down. Let's break this down. Why is the post-patch MSQ just an uninspired nostalgia bait from FF9? FF14 is really going to repeat 6.1 through 5. Now, I've not played FF9, but like, yeah, they said the dungeon is like, it's a castle from FF9, and the trial boss they showed is just a robot version of a boss from FF9, but the whole game is nostalgia bait, so like, I don't understand this complaint. Everything in this game is nostalgia bait for previous games in the series, so like I don't get where this complaint is coming from, because it's just kind of like, what is your expectation really? You know, what is your expectation really? Because that's kind of what they've always done with this game, is take inspiration from older games in the series and twist them into the FF14 style. So this is not new. Like whether or not that's a good or bad thing kind of depends on perspective, but like that's how the game has always been designed. So like I don't see why we would be complaining about it now when like there's been 10 years of this. We already know that this is how the game, like this has always been the thing. Why is Cosmic Exploration just reused assets from the moon? Well, I'm not on the dev team, so I don't officially know the reason, but I would guess because it keeps the file size down. The more assets you reuse, the fewer you have to have downloaded onto the player's PC. It kind of makes sense to get as much use out of them as possible, especially when the moon was entirely underutilized in Endwalker, so like, to me this is fine. I don't see a problem with recycling space assets in space content. It makes perfect sense. It's just efficient, really. Well, yeah, I don't see anything wrong with reusing moon assets on Cosmic Exploration. They reused Ishgard assets on Ishgard Restoration. They reused assets from Gimlet Dark to make Bazia. Like it's just, again, there's no reason not to do this, and this isn't really any argument. This doesn't really say anything. Like reusing assets isn't a bad thing as long as they're used creatively and in a transformative way. It would be pretty awkward if you were just copy and pasting whole dungeons verbatim with no changes, but like that's not what's going on here. This is just like, we've already got moon textures, why would we make new ones? You know, there's no reason to make new rock textures, we've already got them. And then not mentioned whether Phantom Jobs will be anything more than Lost Actions or logograms. Now, I'll be real. It goes back to the first point of like, what is your expectation? Because I don't know why you would expect it to be anything but. Now, we could argue whether that's a good thing or not, because it's like, you know, we're doing a third instance zone. It's going to have actions similar to the previous ones. It will almost certainly just be Lost Actions 2.0, Logograms 3.0. Absolutely. Like, that is 100% the expectation. But that's just it. Like, I don't know why you would expect differently. And yeah, is the idea going to be tired after being done 3 times? Maybe. It depends on how they go about it, because Lost Actions are still different from Logograms in that they're a lot more customizable and there's a lot more of them. And they did more interesting things, and they also had a lot of cross-play between them. Like, it built off of the Logogram system and expanded upon it. And so if Phantom Jobs do that, and like basically take those similar concepts and find a transformative way to use them, I see nothing wrong with them just being another iteration of it, because that's always what it was expected to be. But my thought is, but here's the other thing. This guy complains like whether Shade's Triangle will be the same pointless fate bum rushing. It probably will be. Almost certainly it will be. Whether Cosmic Exploration is just Ishgard, new variant criterion, something that hasn't been part of the 12-year-long formula. A lot of this stuff is like, they're not going to talk about details until like it's closer to release. And so this is just the announcement, like these things are going to be in the patch. They're going to give us more details in future live letters. So like this is mostly just complaining for the sake of it. We already know there's going to be multiple live letters before the patches come out, and like this is the type of stuff that they will elaborate on as the content gets closer. It was announced in the most recent one. They generally never go like super far in depth on that stuff right away. But yeah, I will say though, like just one more thing on the topic of this one. It was weird that they deleted a bunch of threads about the live letter, because there was like 2 or 3 that got deleted. I was reading them like the day the live letter happened, the next day they were just gone and replaced with this thread. So like it was odd that they were just like straight up just throwing forum posts out. Deleted why? We don't know. Presumably there was talk about the player scope issue. People are assuming it's because of that. Like they were complaint threads, but every thread on the forum is a complaint for the most part. So like that's not unusual. You know, it's pretty typical. Because again, this thread like basically has all the same information that was in the previous thread, the one that was deleted. And so it's not really clear why they deleted it. Player scope, the quote unquote stalker plugin. All right, let's see. Thematic issues. Why all the sci-fi? Does anyone just shitpost on the forum? Yes, that does happen. Most of the people on the forums just come to complain about stuff like this one. Thematic issues, why all the sci-fi? So there's really not a need to read all of this. It basically just says like, you know, the new cosmic exploration thing is too sci-fi. We got too much sci-fi. I don't like all the sci-fi. And you can imagine what the discussion is like here. It's basically people saying like, well, we've always had sci-fi. Sci-fi is not new to Final Fantasy. It's not new to FF14. You're just a hater or a fake fan, blah, blah, blah. And I'm kind of on the fence on this one. Because like I also prefer the high fantasy elements more, and I feel like they've been leaning into types of sci-fi that I don't think fit as much. But it is true that it has always been there, so it's kind of like, I think there's got to be like an ebb and flow of it, because like the thing is, the previous iterations of sci-fi in the game were always heavily stylized, and so Garlean stuff was like very steampunk, which kind of fit because it felt like they were like a country that was going through an industrial revolution, but it didn't feel entirely out of place compared to, you know, Limsalimans with their, you know, their powered ships and their cannons and whatnot. It didn't feel entirely out of place compared to Old Da or what have you. It was like clearly more advanced, but it wasn't so advanced that it made everything look ridiculous by comparison. And then the Allegan stuff was all like the same way the Garlean stuff was. It was magical technology, and so it was all like magically themed, and it felt like a very fantastical take on high tech, which was kind of nice. Whereas you get to like Solution 9 and it's like just straight up cyberpunk, and the justification is that they found a magic conductive rock that responds well to electrical energy, and so basically they have a rock that they can make circuit boards out of, which gives them the cyberpunk tech, which feels higher sci-fi than what would fit in with the rest of the world. I also complained about the Ragnarok and Endwalker. I felt like, you know, Endwalker also kind of like took the sci-fi a little bit too far in the sci-fi direction and too far away from like the magical direction, because prior to that, most of the technology was like magic based. The biggest outlier is probably the Omega raids in Stormblood, because the Omega tech is, I don't know, like, on its outside, it's very clunky and like almost steampunk looking, but the whole raid takes place inside of a simulated world, you know? So it's like, it's a lot more advanced than what, you know, like Garlemald could do. But because it's in a simulation, it's almost like it's a little bit separate from the reality. It doesn't feel like we're just introducing a ton of crazy tech into the world. And then we also have the lore that a lot of Allegan tech was based off of copying the Omega tech. It kind of still worked. Like, it was stretching the boundaries a little bit, but it still worked for the most part. Whereas, yeah, I feel like Solution 9 takes it a little bit too far, in my opinion. I felt like the Ragnarok also took it too far, though. So, you know, this isn't the first example of the sci-fi being too advanced for my liking. And yeah, this person's point is basically like, it's weird that we've got people training to use bows and arrows and, you know, flintlock guns when there's like there's Star Trek technology now. And so I kind of understand their point, but I also understand the counterpoint, which is that there has always been sci-fi in the game. But yeah, it always felt like most of the sci-fi elements were otherworldly, and they were something that we barely engaged with, and usually it was in very small doses, whereas to take the Warrior of Light and just put him on a Starfleet ship feels a little too much. Because imagine if this guy was wearing full Realm Reborn plate mail, you know, put him in the light steel flanchard. It's gonna look silly, right? It's like we've got to a point where it's like we've maybe put too many aesthetics in the game. It's starting to clash a little bit. The top dies, well, 100% gonna use it. Yeah, that was my thought too. I'm like, I could see this as a scholar glam, even though I don't like the overt sci-fi aesthetic, but I think I could see this as a good scholar glam. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like I said, I'm like kind of in the middle on the issue. Like, I do feel like they've been taking the sci-fi a little too far, and especially like the modern streetwear stuff, I'm not really a fan of that either. But at the same time, it's like, well, this is just kind of what the game has always been. But it does feel like they've been trending more toward the sci-fi modern stuff lately, and I hope that they don't go further in that direction. I think they're already a little too far in that direction. I hope they kind of like either stay where they're at or course correct a bit back toward fantasy, but I hope they don't go further into sci-fi modern. People want escapism in their games. If I basically log into New York City, I lose the escapism. Yeah, nightclub scene will heavily disagree with you about the streetwear. The nightclub scene doesn't actually want to play FF14 though. I don't think the nightclub scene actually cares about this game at all. Why do you think they're modding in so much stuff that like completely clashes with the game? Like, I don't think they care about the game. They're playing it because it allows them to simulate certain things and simulate certain styles and aesthetics and whatnot. Like, if they could do it better on another game, they probably would. Nightclub scene is playing Second Life. Basically, yes. Like, they play a different game. Yeah. I think that if there was an easier game to mod than this that also had good-looking characters and, like, customizable housing, like, those people would jump ship real fast. Like, I don't think they actually cared that much about the game. Now, that's a generalization. I'm sure there are some people that engage in nightclub stuff and still, like, you know, raid and whatnot. But people that are on that side of the RP scene are kind of playing a different game. People who can't afford VR for VR chat. Yeah. But yeah, the rest of this thread is just a back and forth about the game has always had sci-fi. Yeah, but not this kind of sci-fi. That's basically the whole discussion, is like just kind of like people that are never going to agree. Yeah, I also agree. I'm not a huge fan of the overt lean into sci-fi. Whereas I prefer the older, more stylized versions of sci-fi that we had with Garlemald and Allag. Not a fan of spaceships, and space travel in the way that they're presenting it feels like it's just a little bit out of place. But that's just me. Alright. Viera and Hrothgar complaint mega thread. Well, this thread is from 3 years ago, and I'm pretty sure we already know what it is. There's not really much of a need to read this one. 3 years ago, guess what? Still no hats. Still no hairstyles, still no hats. Actually, we got some more hairstyles now. Look at this. It's pretty good. I gotta say, I did not like Hrothgar faces that much. They didn't commit to full furry, but they hit a weird break point in between furry and humanoid, and it's just like the worst of both worlds. I've seen some pretty good looking Hrothgar, but most of them I just like, man, it's not for me. The thing is, the face matters so much when you're making something anthro, because it has to feel human enough that you can relate to it. Whereas, yeah, a lot of the Hrothgar faces, like, they fall too out of the humanoid range to where, like, it's like comparing the CGI Lion King to the old 2D animated one. You know, it's like they lose some range of expression and relatability. I complained about this a lot in Endwalker as well, because you deal a lot with the Matanga, and they just have a flat elephant face that has virtually no expression and just like those dead eyes that stare flat forward, and there's like a human voice coming out of it though, and it feels incongruous. It's like, I can't relate with this thing. It's bizarre. They didn't quite make it humanoid enough, and that's how I feel with like most Femroths. Again, you can make some decent faces with them, but a lot of them fall a little bit too far outside of that range of recognizability for my liking. All right, here's a thread that's simply titled The Solution. This, it's from 2023. Solution to what? Here it is, peeps. Okay, this is a very specific issue. The glow on the limbal rings of the aura. I have no horse in this race. I don't even know which one is in-game or not. I guess what they're suggesting is that they have a toggle for glow or no glow, and I'm inclined to say, yeah. That works for me. More customization options, always a good thing. I have no problems with this. I don't play Aura at all, so like, I don't know. All right, let's see. I don't think we have enough incentives to join or stay in free companies. I've never been in a free company, so I actually don't know. Oh God, this is a wall of text. Should we do it? Should we climb Mount Texturist? Oh God. This guy has 5 posts on the forum, so they're probably all in this thread. I'll start. I'll read the first paragraph and we'll decide if we want to continue. Hi, I'm opening this thread because I'm a genuine struggle lately and I really don't understand what the point is. Is it just me or is it a game-related issue? I'm the owner of a very small FC. We have some occasional players and some all-year subbed raiders. Problem is, while we normally hang out via other games, somehow it feels like there's nothing FC-related that's worth doing altogether. Literally, it feels like the only content we can do together is roulettes and maps. I don't know. Limsa's ocean fishing? Content that everyone can run through duty/party finder anyways without having to necessarily belong to RFC. I'm not really understanding the complaint here. So he's saying that we made an FC, but we don't need to play together, but the whole point of an FC is that you want to play together. Like, it should be people that you, want to hang out with, and that's why you do it. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm all for more FC activities, and they could definitely integrate it better. But, yeah, this just kind of feels like a non-issue. Okay, we're just about near the end of page 1, and I think we've read everything that's mostly being talked about. Normally, we don't spend this long on the forums, but spoilers, I'm farming this for content, so probably going to release this as a video. Are the developers scared of criticism that critique gets deleted? Let's just quickly skim this. I assume it's going to be same as the last thread, talking about why the live letter threads get deleted. For real, can we not give any criticisms at all anymore? Are the devs and some part of this community this against criticism and potential improvement of the game? Criticism is not a bad thing. And then you got the first response. These forums are 95% criticism. What are you talking about? Yeah, pretty much slash thread. Like, that's basically true. The forums are all criticism. But yeah, I'm pretty sure the threads that got deleted were because people were talking about player scope. Because there was another thread that got deleted. It was someone from the Japanese forums using Translate that was asking, I don't remember specifically what they were asking, but it was to do with the player scope thing. And then somebody explained it to them, and then that thread disappeared very quickly. So yeah, it seems like with that issue, they're kind of sweeping it under the rug. Very curious. I almost made a follow-up video, but there's nothing to really talk about right now on that issue. They addressed it in the live letter, basically by saying that we're aware it's a problem with the player IDs being sent to the client, and we are going to be implementing countermeasures in 7.2, but we aren't going to say what those countermeasures are at this time. And so until we know what the actual countermeasure is, there's nothing really to comment on, which makes me very curious because it almost sounds like they don't have a real solution. Because the thing is, like, a lot of people have been saying, like, well, of course they're going to keep it a secret. It's a security update. You don't talk about security updates because then people can find ways to exploit them before they're even added, which technically would be true in most cases. But with the blacklist change and the account ID and the player scope situation, the problem is that the account ID shouldn't be sent to the player client, period. And that's what's causing the issue. And so unless they're going to change it so that the ID doesn't make it to the client, it won't actually solve the problem. I don't know if maybe they could encrypt it in some way or make it unreadable in some way, but like, as long as the ID is being sent, there's going to be the potential for that same vulnerability. So unless they make the blacklist server-sided, like, the issue doesn't 100% go away. And since they're not commenting on what their solution is, it sounds like they're not making it server-sided, because if they were, then it would be very easy to say, we're just not going to send the account ID to the client anymore. And they wouldn't need to keep that a secret because that would 100% prevent people from exploiting that information. Like, there would be no way to get it. So yeah, I can't really say much on it until we see what the actual countermeasure is, but we'll have to wait and see. Here's hoping they actually solve it, though. As many people have pointed out, not a huge deal. If people can connect your alts together, it's not a huge deal, but it is at least a minor concern. And like, there are definitely people that are like using that information to harass others. And so like, it's something that they need to address. Even if the harm from it is relatively small, they need to address it, and they need to fix it. It never should have been implemented in that state, but here's hoping that they actually do fix it in 7.2. We'll have to just wait and see, though, if they actually do. It'll be awkward if they don't. Don't they just need to encrypt the data? Hypothetically, yes. It's a complicated issue, but best case scenario is they just don't send the ID to the client, period, and just do it server-sided, which is how it should have been in the first place. But the thing is, you don't actually need the plugin in order to see people's player IDs because it's in the data that's being sent to the client. So if you have any basic packet sniffer, you can find it, and those are not that hard to use, and so they need to just not be sending that to the client. Encrypting is pointless because at some point the client has to decrypt it, and the third-party plugins work by reading memory. There you go. Yeah, that's a more technical answer to the question. Yeah, with Tombstone and other sites, you could easily stalk someone even without this plugin. That's also a bad thing. I don't know. It's something they got to sort out, but parsing people, like uploading people's parses against their will is also a bad thing. But let's put it like this, like that's something that's like, there's nothing Square can do to get rid of that. Let me put it like that. Because if you record someone's performance in a raid and post it on a third-party website, like Square has no agency over that. There's nothing they can do with that other than hit it with cease and desist orders, which would be stupid. They would just relocate the server to somewhere where that's not applicable, you know, like they would just find a way around it. There's not really any way to stop people from uploading that information. The best thing that Square can do is just make it so that people can't get the information that's being uploaded. But, you know, raid parses are one thing. While there is potential for people to be harassed for them, it's not the same as your account ID tying all your alts together and all of your retainers together. Because for raid parsing, there's actually a practical application for, you know, reading that info where it's like, I want to see how good this person is at the raid. And while I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, I think you can use that info maliciously. It's not the same as like the account ID thing, which really has no positive practical application. Like, not a fan of the fact I have logs, even though I've never used the plugin. Yeah, I'm not crazy about it either, but like I said, that's something that they can't necessarily get rid of. But all right, there's one new thread that popped up while we were reading that last one. What is this? Kinda ironic how mods are deleting negative comments, had a bunch deleted. Censoring your player base is not exactly a good idea, but keep doing it. This means nothing if they don't say what comments got deleted. At least we know JP Forum is not the only one you guys are reading. Yeah, this post in a vacuum means nothing. I need to know what was deleted. If all you say is, they deleted my negative comments, like, it doesn't mean anything. Like, what were the comments? What were the comments exactly? Because, like, one person's quote-unquote criticism could be very different from another person's criticism. Like, I need to just know what the comments are. They're not just gonna come out and say I used a slur. Well, we also can't just apply that. We can't slap that label on them and say that they did that, because we don't know. You know, maybe they were legitimate comments that were just deleted unfairly. But again, if we don't know what the comments were, we can't make that call. Like, it's not useful just to say that it's ironic that they're deleting my negative comments. I need to know what the comments were. But anyway, that is pretty much everything on the front page of the forums. That's most of the stuff that people have been talking about with the game. We got 7.2 coming out in little under 2 months. Still too far away for my liking, but it's always fun to read all of the miserable posts on the forum because you get a handful of valid criticism and then you get a lot of people that'll never be happy with anything. And so it's always fun just to see what's here and discuss it. And like I said, I love farming for content, so probably I'll toss this video up, see if people enjoy this type of discussion, and if they do, maybe we'll do more of it. Because I was thinking recently, we started reading the forums on stream, like, kind of recently, a couple weeks ago, and I feel like this would be a fun discussion to have on the YouTube channel as well, just so that it can be preserved in some fashion, because Twitch is very fickle, and so once the stream is over, nobody will ever watch it again. But we'll toss it up on YouTube and see how it does. I'd expect ETA maybe like a Wednesday or something. I gotta do a mentor roulette video tomorrow, but Healer Strike's still ongoing. It never started. Lol.